Welcome to another episode of Talking Nerdy in the Bedroom with just me. Just me this week. Both Corey and Mike are not feeling well, so we're looking at just me. You get to spend 30, 45, an hour just listening to this sultry voice. I know, I wish I could be you. Well, technically I will be you. I have to edit this thing. But either way, we are going to be, and by we, again, I just mean me. It's weird doing this alone. We've done it with just Mike and I. We've had Casey as a guest star. We've had 4 of us. But I figured the show must go on even though those 2 weren't able to make it. So if I say we, just know it's out of habit even though I'm sitting alone in this nerdy bedroom. Anyway, this week I'm going to be talking about music biopics. We were going to do House of the Dragon, but I wanted to wait for those guys to kind of get their opinions. And this last couple weeks, the thing that's been making its rounds around. I'm very good at this talking, especially when no one's here to mock me. But the Weird Al story has been making the rounds around TikTok, Facebook, and all that stuff. And it made me start to think about music biopics as a whole and the ones that I've kind of enjoyed. So I figured I'd take this opportunity to actually talk about them, as I've watched quite a few of them. And especially we're going to touch base first on the Weird Al one, because his was so different than any of the other ones that you see. Now, most of these biopics obviously are, it's not that you have to take it with a grain of salt, but they're embellished or changed so that the movie flows better. The Weird Al one was done intentionally to be a parody. Now, if anybody knows anything about Weird Al, his songs are all parody songs. He takes somebody else's song, he adds his own words to it, and then it becomes this fake song that's funny, that is usually pretty catchy, and it did definitely catch on, but nothing like it caught on in the movie. In the movie, he becomes like the biggest star in the world, and he has this whole relationship with Madonna, even though Weird Al himself has said that I think he only met Madonna once, and it was for like 45 seconds, but she is a huge part of the movie and really the villain of the movie. But the movie itself was off the walls. It's got Daniel Radcliffe playing Weird Al himself, and there are so many cameos. It was one of the things I wasn't expecting for this type of movie. It was just cameo after cameo after cameo of people just wanting to be in this hilarious movie, and it seemed to all really land. You also had Dwight from The Office, also known as Rainn Wilson, playing the mentor or de-mentor of Daniel Radcliffe's Weird Al. It's really funny and off the walls and different. It's not something that I think I'd ever watch again. It's one of those, but it was definitely worth the watch, especially when you figure out that it's on Roku TV, which is a free app that like anybody can download to any smart TV or your phone, and you get to watch for free. There are commercials every like 20 minutes or so, but for the most part, it's a free full theatrical release, except just, right to your home, and you can't really beat that. The price there is for anybody that doesn't want to spend $20, $30, $40 going to the movies when you add in popcorn, soda, souvenirs, whatever else. But anyway, this movie was really well done. It was one of those things that I'm kind of glad they released it on Roku, because I don't think it would be a theatrical success. I don't think it would have the box office needed to look at making back the money, but I definitely think that it could get more eyes on the Roku TV app and see what else is on there for them, which was, I think, their whole intention behind buying this to release it is just to let people know, hey, we have this app, we have movies, we have TV, you should come watch it. Hey, look, you can watch this brand new film for free. It has gotten decent reviews, so you don't really have to worry about not getting a movie that's enjoyable. It's just going to be dependent on your taste, though. It's one of those where if you go in expecting like an actual biopic, you're not going to enjoy this. If you go in expecting a serious movie, you're not going to enjoy it. But if you like Weird Al and you like the parodies, you'll definitely enjoy this. It's definitely a movie that I wouldn't have expected to go see in theater or would have expected to even talk about during this podcast if it wasn't for those two guys being sick. But because it's been making the rounds and it's relevant right now, felt like it was a good time to use it as a segue to talk about other biopics that I enjoyed. And let's first start with one of the newest ones that I've seen, which was Rocketman. Rocketman is all about Elton John and his career. Obviously, again, it's a biopic, as I mentioned, so you can't take everything as gospel. But you have, oh God, what's his name? Taron Egerton, who plays him, who does really well, trying to encapsulate who Elton John was and the struggles that he has. And the music in it, especially if you like Elton John music, is just really well done. The performances are right there. But the one that movie, I think it came out after, because I think Rocketman was 2019, and then Bohemian Rhapsody was 2018, so a year later. And Bohemian, which is all about Queen, who obviously sang the song Bohemian Rhapsody, was one of my favorite movies of 2018. I loved Rami Malek's portrayal of Freddie Mercury, even though they kind of butchered the whole Queen story. They got pieces right, but the whole thing about them not being together and then reforming just to perform at Live Aid was nothing that actually happened, but it did make for an interesting story. But the characters' performances in this, how they come up with the songs, and the songs, oh my God, the songs throughout the entire movie, where they're coming up with new ones or they're doing montages. If you like Queen, it's so well done. Everything seems to fit exactly where it should. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot to not like about this movie, depending on what you were really expecting for the movie. But if you were expecting a Hollywood-style biopic, you got exactly that. It was a commercial success. It was mostly a critical success. There's even talks about a possible sequel, but it's just one of those movies where if you like Queen or even know some of Queen's song and you heard that this movie was going to be released, it definitely gets you excited for it. I went to the theater to see it. My theater was not sold out, but it was quite full. So there was definitely this need to want to go see it, to see the performances, to hear the music. Like, for me, the music was one of the best parts about the whole movie. Even though the movie was fine, the acting was fine, the music, because if you're a Queen fan, you're just gonna sit there and listen to the music like if you were sitting at your own house and put on Spotify just to listen to some tunes. It was basically that, but you're getting more out of it. Think of a very long, because you're talking like an hour and a half music video with just music. From there, though, I'm going to bring up Elvis, which I think came out this year, which I wasn't a fan of. It might be because I wasn't, I'm a millennial, I think. I think technically I'm a millennial. But the Elvis thing never really did it for me. Maybe if I'd grown up hearing his songs, I would have been more apt to like the movie or care about the story. And again, it's one of those stories where it doesn't take everything into account, which seems to be a running theme with these types of movies, especially the ones that always say inspired by a true story, which is very annoying because anything can be inspired by a true story. One little snippet of this person saves this person's life or this person made a music song. Okay, great. Now we're going to do a whole movie based on that. So you have this original idea, but then we're not going to do the research, or we don't think it's going to translate to film. So we're not going to put exactly what happened on there. No, we got to commercialize it. We got to sexualize it. We got to do all this other stuff to it so that we can try to make sure that people come out. So for me, the Elvis one didn't really work. I know some people really liked it, especially the Elvis fans and the biopic fans, but that one never landed for me. I very much enjoyed Johnny Cash, but I Walk the Line was okay, but it was also one of those movies where I think I would watch it once and probably not again. Joaquin Phoenix, I believe, was the person that was portraying Johnny Cash, and to my knowledge, because it's been a while since I've seen that one, he did a fine job. The story seemed to to more focus on his career trajectory and how he dealt with things, but it still wasn't one of those movies that I think that I would want everybody to see. I mean, unless you're a fan, there are certain movies out there where, regardless of whether you're a fan or not, because the performances are so good or the story's so good, hey, you should go see them. This isn't that movie. I love that they did the parody of it, which was called Walk Hard, which is with John C. Reilly playing Dewey Cox, which is supposed to be the direct parody of Johnny Cash. That movie was very funny. It had its moments of just complete levity and then also trying to be a little bit true to the Johnny Cash side of it, of what he went through and the struggle and all that stuff. But it was a riot. And especially if you, again, very similar to the Weird Al one, if you go in expecting a parody, you'll enjoy it. If you go in actually expecting something different, it's probably not going to be worthwhile. So now that we've talked about some pop, some rock, some country, let's switch genres to rap. And I know I'm kind of going rapid fire through these, but it's a little bit difficult to have a conversation with people that aren't here to get their takes on it, to see what they thought. When I come up with potential questions for them for how they felt about things, and then you have this actual conversation. It's the whole point of a podcast. People that can do one-person podcasts just by themselves, I'm very impressed by that. Bill Burr has his Monday morning podcast, I think is the name. It's just him. Granted, sometimes he reads out emails and things like that, but he's phenomenal. I'm not that guy. But we're going to keep going, and now we're going to talk about rap, and let's talk about Straight Outta Compton, which was the NWA biopic, which was mostly, I think Ice Cube is the one that kind of tried to put it on film so everybody could see it. I do know, again, this one was more towards real life, mostly because of Ice Cube basically being in charge of it, but he also is... It's hard when you talk to anybody and say, hey, do you remember this? Everybody remembers everything differently. So unless something is like caught on film and you can see everybody's take and reactions to it, you're never going to get 100% accuracy on anything. But having somebody that's still alive, that's able to say, yes, this happened, no, this didn't happen, or hey, I need it to be like this, it's probably going to be a better take on the movie. But you're still getting his interpretation rather than anybody else's. I know other people collabed with it, but when you have this, you have the tendency to potentially either make yourself look better or make other people look worse if you were having this issue. But NWA was a great movie Straight Outta Compton was a great movie about the NWA, and how they formed was very interesting to me, with just being out in the hood and then having this one basic drug dealer who had the money for time, so let's get him to foot the bill, and now let's get him to actually be part of our group because he's lived this lifestyle, so it's going to sound more sincere, and Ice Cube is going to write most of the raps, and then they're going to come up, they get an agent. It's just a very interesting story, even if you didn't like rap or NWA. It's an interesting story. Now, the music does play a big part of it when they're coming up with songs, especially songs that, a lot of people grew up with or heard later on in life, but even if the music isn't for you, the story is definitely there. This is one of them that I would definitely recommend for people, even if they didn't enjoy NWA. Now, that might be hard, because if you really didn't enjoy them and you hated them, you're not going to like this movie. But if you just never really heard of them, or you're like, it's not really my thing, you should probably still enjoy this movie. It's just got solid performances by the entire cast and people that have then gone on to break out into bigger things. It's also got Paul Giamatti as their manager, I believe, and he does really well throughout the whole thing. You get a lot of the background with these characters of where they went after the group kind of broke up. You get the background of what they were thinking when they were trying to make this group happen, and some of the turmoil that they faced in regards to the police, also in regards to people not really believing in them, which always seems to be a constant for most of these movies, where somebody eventually does make it and breaks out and becomes successful. there's always that story of this group, this family, this something told them they couldn't do it or they wouldn't make it, and then they eventually do. Now, for every one story like that, there's probably thousands where they were told that, and that's what happened. They weren't able to succeed. So it becomes a bit cliche, but it's not cliche in the same way of just saying it to make it sound cliche or doing it so it's cliche. These are things that actually happen, but because it's in almost every single movie or biopic like this, it just becomes one of those tropes where you just roll your eyes a little bit. But I felt like this one was actually done in a way that was true to the characters and fun to actually watch. Now, if we stay with the rap biopics, there's also the 8 Mile one from, oh god, that was a long time ago, 2002, I believe. We had 8 Mile, which was an Eminem biopic, but also not a biopic, so that one's a little bit weird, where the other ones are kind of like based on true stories of how the group came together. This one, you actually have Eminem playing Jimmy Smith instead of being who he is, Marshall Mathers. But it's basically based on his life of how he came up with being kind of like trailer park trash on the wrong side, and then trying to make his way into the rap world and how he was able to deal with being the white person and how do I get these people to respect me. You also had Kim Basinger in the movie, which I thought was a really good get because she used to be a Bond girl. She was in a bunch of other things too. You have Mekhi Phifer, who is fantastic as Future in it. And then you also have Brittany Murphy, who's now, not recently, she's passed away a while ago. Everything feels like it just happened. But Brittany Murphy in it. There's so many other performances that kind of put you in a spot where you're usually laughing at something stupid they did or very interested in it. You have Cheddar Bob, played by Evan Jones, who is such comedic relief in this whole thing. It's just a really well done movie that I very much enjoyed, but part of that I think is being a huge Eminem fan back in the day. When I was growing up, the Eminem craze was everywhere. We had so many people, including my best friend Matt, who decided he wanted to dye his hair basically with peroxide. He didn't actually do it with peroxide, but dyed his hair, tried to emulate looking like Eminem a bit. And there's just so many people in our generation that were growing up that loved his music, his style, because it was so different than everything else, that got us into rap as a genre. And then there was just so much controversy surrounding him too, which for whatever reason made him, I don't want to say cooler, but it just kept his name like in attention in the span of everything. Nowadays, where you've got like TikTok going viral for things, back then it was because of the controversies that basically made these artists go widespread, and everybody would kind of know about them because of something that happened or something they did or some lyric they said. You have the whole Marilyn Manson thing where he's just so off the wall, where he went, mainstream widespread, but was for bad reasons, but he still kept his name out there. Eminem, the same thing, even though he was selling millions upon millions of records, everybody was focusing on like the lyrics in the sense of that they were true and how could you say this and things like that. And he's even gone on record saying some of the stuff he wish he hadn't have said, and he was younger and things like that. But it's still music, which is still freedom of speech, and it's one of those things where if you liked all of his CDs, and I think I owned them all at one point and might even own them all now, although now everything's just directly on Spotify, it seems. He did this movie as like an homage to himself, and he's not a good actor. Let's be very clear on that. Eminem is not somebody that should be on the screen, but playing himself, he didn't do bad, especially when he's writing down his lyrics and dealing with the anxiety of needing to compete in front of a large crowd and go up against somebody who's potentially, like, the whole point with these rap battles that they have in the movie is to make fun of or diss the other person. And are my disses going to be better than their disses? They have more ammunition against me, but I have better lyrics than them. So how do I do this? Like his struggle with that, the way his performance was when he was doing those rap battles is fantastic. The rest of the movie, not so much for his performances. Like when he's doing his regular day job, when he's fighting with his ex, the scenes with Brittany Murphy, they're not overly, like, you're not going to give him an award for acting. However, I will say that this movie did give the first rap song its Academy Award for Lose Yourself, which is a huge get because that's never happened before, and it's actually a really good song. It's probably overplayed, or was overplayed at the time, just because of how good it was. But that's a huge thing to transcend the music industry into the movie industry and be able to have a song that is in the genre of rap, like, get this award. I know we're slowly coming up in the world where the first of this and the first of that is no longer going to be a thing because it already happened and probably should have happened a long time ago. But something like this set the way for other ones to potentially get that type of award. I don't know if there's been any other rap song that has gotten it, but because I have this fancy handy thing where I can hit pause, I'm going to look that up real quick. That pause button is very convenient because I was able to find it and you guys didn't really have to wait. So there was one other rap song that won a couple years later after Eminem, which was from the movie Hustle and Flow. It's hard out here for a pimp is what it was called, which is a story about this struggling artist trying to make it as a rapper, but it's not a biopic, but it did end up winning that award, and potentially because of what Eminem did to show that rap songs could be that. Now, you could take that with a grain of salt in and of itself, just because it does one movie, or I should say this, one song mean that it breaks other ones through. It shouldn't, but could it be? Is it more accessible now? Like it sets a precedent that it's okay for things to happen? I don't know. But a couple years after the Eminem win, they did end up winning for that song. So now we're going to move away from rap and now briefly touch on Ray, which was a movie that Jamie Foxx starred in that was all about Ray Charles, who this movie was way better than I expected it to be back in, early 2000s, I think. I don't remember the exact year. But Jamie Foxx playing Ray Charles and the struggles that he went through and the performance that Jamie Foxx gave. And Jamie Foxx wasn't somebody that I ever saw myself really liking as an actor with hearing some of his music, but he makes such a better actor than he did music. It's not even close. He's one of those people that if he can sink his teeth into a character, he's going to play them very well. I believe that the film, I know it was a commercial success. Like their box office was somewhere in the 100 million something. I know that their budget was way less than that, like 20, 30, 40 million. And it was huge, and for him, I believe he won a crap ton of awards off it. I just used that handy-dandy pause thing again to see that, yeah, he won Best Actor in a Leading Role. There was Best Sound Mixing for the Academy Awards, bunch of other awards, too. Like, it was such a good performance by him that seemed true to who Ray was, and it's just one of those movies where I think it shoved him even more into the limelight. Like, he had other movies that were some box office success, but I don't know if he had any that were, like, critical successes, except for this movie. Now, he's done other movies since then that potentially could be in the same vein. He's also really funny. He was great in Horrible Bosses. He was, for less funny, he was great in Django Unchained. But he's really a good actor when he can sink his teeth into a role. But then you have movies like, what was it? The Amazing Spider-Man 2, which I don't think was necessarily him. I think it was script, because then he showed up in true form in the newest Spider-Man Marvel movie, No Way Home. So I think that was more or less him. I don't want to say phoning it in, but trying to give the director what they wanted from what the script said, and it didn't land at all, to the point where I believe when he told them that he would agree to come back, like, he wanted his character to be different. Obviously, they changed it a bit to make it more comic accurate. But anyway, we were talking about Ray, and then I started talking about Jamie Foxx. But Ray is a movie that, even if you don't like Ray Charles or know any of his music, you should probably go see or rent or whatever, because it's been like almost 20 years. But it's such a good performance, it's such good music, and it's just gives you the struggles of what Ray dealt with. I highly, highly recommend it. Now, to finish up this podcast, I'm going to touch briefly on probably the first biopic I ever saw when I was a kid, and that was only because my mom, my grandmother, my friends of mine's mother, for whatever reason, they really liked Selena, and it was obviously a biopic in regards to Selena. It was about her life, her career, and then also her murder. So it's one of those that really struck a chord with a lot of people. It made money. Again, this movie was back in 1997. So if you look at the budget of the movie, which was $20 million, and then looking at this, they made about $35 million in just the United States. It's a $15 million success minus any advertising they did for it, which was probably high too. But in 1997, it's still a success. Anytime you can make millions more than what you paid, that's a good day. But this is a movie that had Jennifer Lopez, who starred as the title character. It also had Edward James Olmos, who we just talked about in our 25th special for Battlestar Galactica, and he's great in this too. This was not a movie, like, at the time I liked it, but I felt like I liked it because my family liked it, because I didn't even know who Selena was or what her music was or anything like that. I have watched it again, God, I want to say like a decade ago or something like that, which is still quite a while. So it's hard to remember everything, but I don't remember liking it as much now as when I was a kid. I think I actually forgot, like 10 years ago when I watched it, that I had even seen it until I started, like, as we were getting to certain scenes, it was like, I kind of know what's about to happen. But it's a movie that it definitely seemed, I don't want to say that it swept the nation, because by the box office it didn't, but it was one of those biopics where it was telling the story of what happened to her that a lot of people didn't know. The background of what she went through, and then obviously her murder. Everybody kind of heard that she had gotten murdered, but this goes into more detail about it. Obviously they don't get everything right, they never do, but it was one of those movies that, you know, it got nominated for a bunch of awards, it won a bunch of awards, so it definitely is one of those, if you want to see a young J-Lo, if you want to see Edward James Olmos, this could be a good movie, especially if you know of Selena, have heard of any Selena song, then this will probably be the movie for you. Now, I don't know how many movies we've talked about now, as I know we're about 30 minutes into this thing, so I'm probably going to wrap it up there. As I said at the beginning of this thing, going to be 30, 40, an hour. Yeah, we're going to stick with 30 with my thoughts on these biopics. And then we'll pick it up next week. We have hopefully both Corey and Mike back in the podcast studio. We'll be talking about House of the Dragon, which ended like a month ago or so. But there's just been so many things that keep coming up that are things that we want to talk about, like with Black Adam 2. We had our Halloween episodes last month for the month of October, so that took up time. Then we had our 25th special, so we're going to be getting to that one. We're going to be getting to the Lord of the Rings. I know Black Panther 2 just technically came out yesterday when I'm recording this, so there's a ton of things that we're going to be getting into. I know that Corey and I are trying to get together to film a Cobra Kai episode to talk about like the 5 seasons of that. And then I know we've got Andor to talk about. We've got the Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power to talk about. So there's so much nerdy content out there that we'll be bringing to you every week. Even though we've got some holidays coming up with Thanksgiving and Christmas, we already have some stuff planned out to do some double episodes so we can make sure that everything comes to you when it's supposed to. And then if everybody bails, I might do this again. I'll figure it out. I'll talk Unless, like, our viewership goes down to 0. Right now, we've got that solid 1. I want to keep that 1. If we go to 0, it's probably not going to look too well for us. But as long as one person listens, I'll keep doing the solo performance if Mike and Corey aren't able to be here. Oh, and before I close out, just to tie it back into the Weird Al thing that I first started talking about, which made me want to do this podcast, Weird Al himself is in the actual movie, who becomes like the producer of Weird Al to release his CDs and everything. Somebody's also trying to show up. But it's him and Will Forte that are brothers, and Will Forte lays into Daniel Radcliffe about being a waste of talent and all these things, and Weird Al is sitting there in the movie playing this other character, listening to them just demolish him and his act and his music, and it's probably the scene that I laughed the most of. So if you get to that scene and you enjoy it, feel free to let me know. Otherwise, we're just going to wrap this up now. Next week will all be about House of the Dragon.